What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode review of My Hero Academia, and this one's another decent episode. Nothing too crazy going on, so let's get into it. So we pick up where we left off with the last episode, which is to win these kids' hearts, and of course we have this just barrage of quirks coming at our main heroes because these kids just want to go all out in fighting them, which doesn't really work out for them too well in terms of like thinking that they have the upper hand, but that's fine because that's not really the point of this episode. But early on it does look like they're actually just laying into our main heroes, and it's funny because the teacher's freaking out, Present Mike's just kind of thinking, all right, well, let's see what happens next. Like it's kind of funny because we know obviously with Present Mike being a teacher that he is more aware than most of the capabilities of the students that are being tested. So it is actually kind of interesting to see his perspective on it. Now, it was kind of interesting that the other students who were being tested, when they looked on, they were kind of worried that the other guys were in over their heads. And Gangorka points out that in a scenario like that, where everything's sort of out of control, are you just going to stand there and not do anything if you want to be a hero? Which for me actually really reminded me of the fact that this is a remedial hero course, and it's not just our main heroes who are being put through this. So there's other students who failed for some other reason, and we see that it's possible that some of them just locked up in a scenario that was out of their control. And it's actually interesting because the four who are working with these kids are taking the attacks in stride. They have no problem blocking them, though it looked like the one came very close to Bakugo's face. Obviously, it tore his mask up. But it is actually kind of funny. They see how sort of the powers of these kids are good, but not crazy. And we actually have an interesting sort of concept brought up, which is the fact that as quirks meld and as quirks become more mixed together as parents have kids and then the quirks go on and on and on, it might get to a point in the future where quirks just become very uncontrollable, because Present Mike even pointed out that when he was their age, he could not even put out his quirk to that level. And it is kind of interesting that we have these abilities of these students, these younger students, these children, at such a high power level. Not powerful enough to really phase our main students from UA and from the other school whose name I forget, don't yell at me about that. But it is interesting to see that that's sort of a thing that's possible in this world. It is funny to see, though, that while these students are trying to attack Inasa, Kami, Todoroki, and Bakugo, we see Kami's we see Kami's proper quirk, which is an illusion, and she uses that illusion to make Todoroki look very attractive to the younger girl, which completely throws her off when it's revealed that it's just an illusion by Kami, and it was kind of funny. And they even said that like her quirk for manipulation like that is strictly prohibited, so that's kind of funny. But once our main heroes get an idea of what these kids are capable of, Todoroki is able to make an entire ice slide for them. We have Inasa taking them up to the top of the ice slide with his wind abilities. We have Kami making this whole world. It looks like a map straight out of like Mario Kart. It's pretty cool, and it's something that really entertains these kids, especially since Todoroki is also lighting rings of fire around the around the students, which could be a safety hazard, but whatever. It's an anime, so good on them. And this is where the kids actually really start to open up to Todoroki and all the others. And we have Bakugo, who we actually have a pretty noticeable moment of character growth with Bakugo, because he obviously is still very angry, still very violent. Obviously, that's his just personality. But not only is he able to gauge and read attacks and combat skill when he's fighting, he can hone in on the sort of leader and see himself in some of the students, specifically the younger kid who is better than everybody, as he said. The kid just looked down on everybody, and Bakugo can see that and takes him and brings him over. He's like, it's your turn, you're going up on the slide, drags the kid over, and he points out to the kid that the more you look at the more you look down on people, the less likely you are to notice your own flaws, which, in that instance, that means you're never really going to improve. And it really touches that kid. It impacts him. And it's really cool to see, because even though Bakugo can be a bit of a hothead, he understands where this kid's coming from, because he is, or was, or still kind of is, in the same boat where he looked down on Deku. And because he looked down on Deku so much and constantly looked down as he was just the best, he thought he was the best, he looked down on him and wasn't able to see the flaws that he had himself. And that also works really well into why they're in this remedial course, because they're in the remedial course because they weren't up to snuff to be a hero or to be a provisional license holding hero. And Deku was, Bakugo wasn't. So that kind of opened Bakugo's eyes, and I'm sure is what helped him be able to see what these other students or what these other kids, especially the one, are kind of going through. Now, by the end of all this, we see that there is the potential for us to see Inasa and Kami again, because they're looking to do joint training exercises, which could be very interesting. But we then also have Endeavor, and after seeing what these students did, what especially Todoroki, his son, did, and seeing Todoroki use the fire, his fire half, to warm up these kids, like using it as something to not just fight crime, but also to embrace the kindness that you're supposed to kind of have and exemplify when you're a hero. Seeing that, he actually changed quite a bit. Like, we had a lot of character development in this episode, despite not a lot of action or a lot of plot development happening. And I don't mind that. I like character development. That's one of the biggest things that keeps me coming back to this show. But it's nice to see it with other characters, not just one or two. And especially seeing Endeavor, of all heroes, of all characters, Endeavor. We see that Inasa sees in Endeavor's eyes that he has changed. In fact, he sees it and punches himself in the face so that he can go and talk to Endeavor, which is kind of funny. Todoroki is still not a big fan of his dad, even though his dad says that he wants to become a hero that his son can be proud of. And it's nice, actually, to see that. It kind of took me by surprise, kind of came out of left field, but knowing how much separation and how much anger Todoroki has had with his father, it really is kind of interesting to see that even though it's not a completely healed thing due to the years, potentially an entire decade or more of abuse, because of that, obviously it's not going to be forgiven overnight, but it is something that is nice to see growing. After the provisional license portion of this episode's done, we get the heroes side of the wrap-up for this Hisaikai arc, which is Sir Night-Eye's funeral, the main students who were actually in the work studies, going and leaving their work studies to come back and go to school. Centipeder took over for as the main guy for the Sir Night-Eye, or for the Night-Eye agency, and they're going to wait for Mirio to come back, and I'm really holding out hope for Mirio. On top of that, Aries awake, which is nice, and her horn has really reduced in size, which means that whatever quirk ability she has must have something to do with the size of that horn. Maybe it might store that energy or something. But they're definitely, from the one sentence they said in here, which was that she was still very mentally unstable, I feel like that means that there's going to be a lot more they're going to have to do with her to mentally prepare her for all the things that are, going to happen, hopefully, with her later down the road. But because of all the psychological damage from everything she's gone through, I just really, really hope that, it's done respectfully, but in a way that doesn't take too terribly long. Otherwise, though, this is where the episode gets kind of weird, but interesting, but still weird. So the students are back to studying, so there's nothing really exciting about that. We just kind of have the students studying and Deku trying to do his best after dealing with everything with the Hisaikai arc. Obviously, he's just back to school, so he's got to make the most of what he's got here at the school, and he's got nothing better to do because he's got no more hero work now that he's not part of the Night-Eye agency. And it's just school stuff. It seems pretty normal. Then the weird stuff. This is where Aoyama comes in, and it's weird, and he's just I knew that it was kind of a weird look in the preview for last episode, but this is where things are really weird. And they do a good job of kind of keeping us in the dark as to what his end goal is. He just keeps giving Deku cheese, which is really weird. And at one point, he actually comes up on the balcony for Deku's dorm and leaves cheese that says, "I know." And for a second there, I'm thinking, oh, great, we're going to have another character who knows that Deku is the holder of All Might's power, one for all. I'm like, this is going to be just great. We got another character. How easy is it for these people to realize that Deku has this power? Like, come on. But it's not that, which is refreshing. I was afraid it would be, but it wasn't, and that was nice, because if it would have been, that would have been a big problem for a lot of reasons, but it wasn't. So after that really weird night interaction with the two of them, we end up having them back in the training course in the gymnasium, and we have Aoyama training, and he can pretty precisely and very powerfully use his naval laser, and then he tries to write something with it, and it doesn't work very well. It always messes his stomach up, makes him feel bad. So clearly his quirk, his strengths are sort of overshadowed by some of the weaknesses, and that weakness being his, poor stomach not being able to hold up, and apparently other parts of his digestive system that we see later. But before Aoyama grabs himself, we see that it's not the ability of One for All that he knows Deku has, it's that he sees and thinks that he and Deku are very similar, because he, with Naval Laser, has to always wear a support device, and he can't control it in any major or any considerable way without some kind of support device that he's had to wear forever. And so he thinks or sees that his quirk is incompatible with his body. And when he sees Deku early on outputting all of that power, breaking his arms, breaking his fingers, breaking his legs, he assumes, and kind of rightly so assumes, that Deku is the same in that way, that he and Deku both share an incompatible quirk for their body types. And I kind of get that. I kind of think it's neat that he sees that, and through that comparison they become friends, but it's still kind of inaccurate, because Deku, well, I guess not inaccurate, but it's not very good to just go straight in saying that your quirk is incompatible with your body, because training, I feel like, at least on Deku's side, and possibly Aoyama's side, might mean that they will become more capable of controlling their quirks. Obviously, we've seen leaps and bounds with Deku controlling his quirks, so I don't see why Aoyama would be any different. We also have a moment with Kirishima where he is training as hard as possible to even more improve his hardening quirk, so he has Bakugo beat the crap out of him. Actually, no, he has Bakugo and Sato beat the crap out of him, which is kind of funny. And we have Bakugo asking if Deku's made any progress. He says no, and Bakugo throws his words back in his face, saying like, no, I thought you were going to surpass me or whatever. And so it's kind of funny to see that even though there's still that sort of, I wouldn't call it a bitter rivalry, but it's still a very aggressive rivalry. But even with that being the case, they are sort of using that to encourage one another to improve and get better. So that's really nice. But overall, this episode is primarily character development, and I really do like that. We finally get a bit more character development on Aoyama instead of just having him be the comic relief, pretty boy character. We get a ton of character development with the 4 heroes for students in the hero provisional license course, which is really cool. Especially the improvements that we see with Bakugo understanding where a student's coming from and being able to use his experience to hone in on the problems and on the anger that this one student seems to have. Endeavor's character development, oh my god, that was a major thing, which was really awesome. And overall, just the sheer time and effort of put into making these characters feel like real, believable, relatable characters. It's awesome, and I love it. And apart from that, that was the episode. Primarily character development, not a lot of action or world building, but character development, when done well, like it was in this episode, even with comedic cheese notwithstanding, it's still done very well. I still love it, and this episode was pretty much one of the highlights of my day when I watched it, because it was just so funny.
Aoyama-kun.
Apart from that, guys, if you want to watch this episode for yourself, head on down to the link in the description where you can watch it on Funimation. Yes, it is a subscription, but it's the only real legal way to do that. If you're not in the US, don't know what to tell you, please just try to find a legal way to watch it if you can. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think. Did I miss anything? I always do. But if I missed anything, let me know in the comment section. And apart from that, like, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. And I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one. Hey, what's up, guys? Yes, it's a different voiceover for the ending, but it's the same ad. Y'all should go and check out my shirts down there. I've got the Steins Gate shirts, I got the Mob Psycho shirts, I got the SF stuff. You can see the Steins Gate one there. It's really cool, but most of you probably aren't even going to watch to the end anyway to see that it's a different voiceover or hear that it's a different voiceover. But if you did, leave a comment. Say that you noticed that it's a different voiceover. And if you did stay all the way to the end and listen to the ad and haven't clicked on the link yet, then why haven't you? Go click on the link. Go buy a shirt. Come on.